Alright guys, the following video is going to be a breakdown of what to look for in the Hitachi miter saws. If you're in the market for one, you can't buy them anymore new, so this is going to be kind of like your Craigslist offer up guide of what to look for to find a Japanese saw and what to look for to not get a Chinese saw. Okay guys, time to answer a couple of the questions that I get every single week regarding these saws. At least 5 times a week I get asked, why is it my favorite saw? How do you tell the difference between a Gen 1 and a Gen 2? How do you tell if they're made in China, etc., etc., etc. So I'm hoping that this video will answer majority of those questions, and it'll be a reference point for people that have those questions in the future. So here we go. This is the Gen 1 Hitachi. As far as I know, in all the research that I have done, all Gen 1 Hitachis are made in Japan. The way to distinguish the Gen 1s is the simplest way is the handle. You can see that the handle starts from the top portion of the blade here, curves all the way around to the motor housing. Where on the Gen 2, it doesn't. Starts at the same spot, but then it ends, does not go nowhere near the motor housing. So this one here is a continuous swoop. That one's like independent. That's actually a weak point on the Gen 2. This is a common area that they break. So when you're shopping for one, you'll typically see these broken. The good news is you can still buy the complete motor cover and every single part of that cover for the Gen 2. You cannot buy parts for the Gen 1. That's why I have 3 of these, which I guess is not an excuse because I have 3 of those too. But I have a parts saw for this. I haven't had to take it apart yet, but I do have a parts saw for this. So, and I have another one that's in extremely good condition as well. I thought was perfect until I found this one. This one's basically brand new. I got it off a retired highway patrol officer that lived up in Oceanside. He literally did some house projects with it, and it sat in his garage for 20 years. So, like I said, pristine condition. That's just dust. The Gen 1, in my opinion, is a better looking saw, this one here. I actually like the handle look of it. This built-in handle is kind of a gimmick, but it does actually work. I don't like to carry saws by the head, so I think that's not the best, but it's a cool thing, I guess, to look at. The machining on these saws is top-notch. I was going to show you guys with a straight edge and a filler gauge, but unfortunately I left my woodpecker straight edge at the house. I can show you fence wise, this saw has not been touched by me in any way. I bought this and it literally sits in my garage. Filler gauge from the back. Nothing pushes this thing over, so it's machined really well. I've checked the base on that one over there. That's actually my daily use saw, and it's machined so great. That's why these saws are special in my opinion. They're just machined to a higher tolerance than the stuff you can buy nowadays. The thickness of the rails is quite impressive. Obviously, it's made in Japan, so it's not going to be on the imperial scale, but just to give you an idea, they're about 1.25 inches thick. Rail, the ball bearing system on them is really good. They track dead straight, guys, like no joke. They track perfectly, Gen 1 and Gen 2. They're very similar from the standpoint of how they're built. The head mechanism, the rail bar, and the rail housing here, the bevel scale, all that's very, very similar. Even the bases are very similar. But here's another way to spot a difference. The Gen 2 and even the Chinese saws, that's a Chinese one, we'll go over that in a second. The miter scale is a sticker. It's basically, these are all machined, but this is actually a sticker that's applied. Where the Gen 1s are machined into the base. So a little bit harder to read here, but they are forever. These saws don't have detent plates. What they have on the bottom side, I actually had to replace the detent pin on this one. The detent slots are machined into the base, and then there's a locking pin that slams into that. Sounds like a pain in the ass to adjust, but it's not. As long as the saw is not bent, all you ever have to do is adjust the fences. And unlike a lot of miter saws where the fence is one piece, these are 2 pieces. So as long as your fences are perfectly machined smooth, then you can square one side typically, and then run a straight edge and just flush that up to the other side, and your saw should be cutting dead on both ways. The one downside, I personally think the Gen 1, this one over here, is a better looking saw, and I think it's just machined, like I said, to a tolerance that you would have to use one to understand. The one downside to it is its detent plate. So it doesn't have a lock detent plate. What you got to think about it as is it's like a ball and catch. So the actual detent has, everywhere that there's a detent, it's just a little round dome area, like kind of like a bullet door stop, and a little ball on a spring catches it. And you can feel that. When you come into zero, see how you can roll in and out? You can feel the ball engaging. But when you're on zero, you can move it slightly. So if you're not used to the saw, you tighten it down wherever you want, but you still can roll out of the detent fairly simple if you wanted to. So there's 22.5, but I mean, you can move it unless you lock the detent plate. Where on the Gen 2 and newer models, it's a locking detent. It's all the common locking detents: 0, 15, 22.5, 31.6, 45. Both scales on both saws are identical, as in to the left you got 45 and to the right you have 57 degrees. They're the exact same. The base on this one is a 1/2 inch narrower, I think. Let's see here. It's about 20.5, looks like. And 20 and 7/8, so 3/8 of an inch narrower. Like I said, I have a brand new one of these. If I wasn't such a lazy, I was gonna bring it today so that way I had a new one next to a new one, but I just didn't want to clear out the back of my truck to fit the boxes. It's still in the box. But again, daily use, this is probably gonna be the easier saw to work with just because of that detent plate. The other thing that makes this a more favorable saw right now is you can still get majority of the parts for it. You cannot buy parts for that. So the Gen 2, if you break something, you break the motor cover, you break the handle. I ordered this off e-replacement parts. They sent me the wrong one for that one down there, but you can get the locking detent pin. I got that, a new handle. They still sell parts for this saw. You cannot buy parts for that. So what I've done is I got 3 of those. One's a part saw, and they're more for when I get my home shop finally set up the way I want it. I'll have them set up to do different features. Now with the names of the saws, this is another way you can tell. So one of the other big questions is, what's the difference between the C10FSH and the C10FSB? It's the laser, that's it. The C10FSH has a laser. The C10FSB does not. Other than that, they're identical. They are machined the same quality, same identical saw. It's funny, the FSH comes with a red insert, and the FSB comes with a gray insert. But I mean, literally guys, they're identical. They're both Japanese made, fine, fantastic saws. It's the laser. The C10FS is the Gen 1. The C10FSH and C10FSB are the Gen 2s. If they say FSBS or FSB, whatever, anything else besides FSH or SFB or FS, they're not Japanese made. So the FSH is the laser Japanese saw, the FSB is the non-laser Japanese saw, and the FS is the original 10-inch slider. The only saw that came out before that one was their 8 1/4. That one, but the Japanese version, that's a Chinese saw. I do not have a Chinese 10-inch, but the bases on the 8 1/4 and the 10-inch are identical. They literally are identical. Matter of fact, you can see this is a single bevel saw. The 8 1/4s are always a single bevel. You can see that it could go both ways. The saw can bevel both ways. It just won't because of where the motor's at, so they put a stop back there. But that base can allow the saw, if the saw was capable, to tilt both ways. That's because they're the same bases. Now the Chinese ones have this dark gray color. None of the Japanese saws have that. So this really dark gray and the newer green color, those are the Chinese saws on the 10-inch. You can notice here on this base, it's white, like a white, off-white color. And on the old original Gen 1s, it's this really dark metal green with the stamped base, which is a dead giveaway. But on that one, that's like the almost like a bronze gray compared to these two colors. Regarding motors, they're both soft start. They both are belt driven, quiet, and they sound identical. So the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. So they sound identical. Same distance of travel as far as cuts go. This thing here at its max, because I have a zero clearance insert. And it looks like it'll cut almost 12.5 inches. I would say 12 3/8 cross cut ability. One of the other questions I get a lot is, will the saw bevel past 45? Believe it or not, it can. Now, the thing with that is, it has a stop. So you see those two bolts back here, those are your stops. You can see that they could still go significantly down. I actually had that one over there set up to cut 47 degrees at one point. I think I put it back. I don't really use that saw anymore, but one of the tricks that I seen on one of the online forums, I think it was Contractor Talk or something, was somebody actually put a magnet on here and he backed these down and set the magnet height at 45 degrees. So if he ever had to override that, he could just pull the magnet off and then the saw would stick the magnet right out here and the saw would go as far as he wanted it to. So there is tricks around it. The saw is capable of going past 45 degrees. The slot there, let me bevel it. So I'm at 45 right now. You can't see it. Let me back this out a little bit. You guys can't see it, but it's capable of going a couple degrees past that. It's just limited by the stop. You can see the stop there. So it is more capable. The pins on the back are very similar from the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. Like I said, the Gen 1 is it just looks like cool old machinery, which I really like. But that's your detent pin override, or your detent pin to go right to left. The saw will naturally go to the right. Obviously, you pull the pin back and it sets to the left. But there's your stop pins. Again, this is the Gen 1. I wanted to show you guys how flat the base was. Unfortunately, I left my straight edge at home, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it, or I can show you in later videos. The fences, on the other hand, are perfect. Just a different era. I mean, literally, guys, a different era of machining. I just think they took stuff more serious back then. I brought in a house scale, which seems pretty accurate. My fat ass stood on it earlier. I'm gonna throw these on there and I'll show you the weight. To keep it somewhat fair, I pulled off the extensions and the material hold down off this one because this saw doesn't have those on it. This one does have a tilting fence here. That one does not, but that's attached to the saw, so we're gonna leave that on. So I'm gonna weigh the Gen 1 first. Okay, completely supported on the scale. 46.7 pounds. Okay, Gen 2. Of course, it's going to be a pain in the ass. Bear with me, let it zero out. 46.7, I think it's the exact same. Of course, this has a Carpenter 1.3 sticker on it, and that carries a lot of weight. Horrible joke. So that's pretty crazy. They're the exact same weight to the ounce. Yeah, I don't know why I thought that this one was a little bit lighter. What's funny about these saws is they're 47 pounds, but they're one of the easiest saws to carry just because of you can see, I mean, they don't take up a lot of room. So it's really easy to grab these saws. I usually just grab them from a little handful from the side. And I think that DeWalt that Adam just bought is like 10 pounds heavier. It might even be less than that, but it feels really bulky compared to these when you're used to these. So these are very compact. That's why a lot of the old production trim guys like them, because they would pick them up, throw them into different rooms, and they're little workhorses. I did notice right now, and it's funny, I never noticed this before, but the actual bevel slot on the Gen 1 is on the bottom, and on the Gen 2 it is on the top. See here? And I actually like that on the Gen 2 better, because on the Gen 1, your hand hits the ground. Now, it does have one of those pull release knobs where you can pull it out, move the knob, and re-rotate, but still, as far as speed and easy use, that's definitely a better setup. That one's a pull and release knob too. Yeah, so I do like the top mount better. Okay, the negatives. If you're somebody that constantly likes to cut molding standing up, probably not the best saw for you. You are limited to about 4 inches of usable height. So these saws were meant for people to cut flat. It excels at cutting flat. It has markings for both 90-degree corners on 45 and 38-degree crown. It's really good at cutting flat. It has very minimal, if any, head deflection, especially if you put a good blade on it. With an FS tool blade, there's zero deflection on these things, or a Royce blade or something high end. I even run Tenaroos. This one's got a Tenaroo on it, and it is the Miter Pro. It's giving me zero problems. Cuts great. Cuts so good that Russell cut into my fence. You didn't even know. So great saws as far as that goes. But again, if you are somebody that likes to cut with your molding standing up, it is limited to 4 inches there. The other downside is it goes 45 to the left, 57 to the right. Compared to like the new Makita 36 volt saw, it goes 60 degrees both ways. So if you're cutting stairs for a living, and you need that 60-degree bottom cut, or you're constantly cutting steep angles, obviously we all know there's jigs to get around that. If you have a track saw, or if you have an HK, or there's several different ways to get around that. But if you want your miter saw to cut more than that, probably not the saw for you. Parts, you can still buy parts for this. I do not know how much longer that's going to be possible. You guys know how that goes. Your guess is as good as mine. The handle here is the weak point. That handle, you can see, if you drop something on it really hard, you're going to break it right there. As of right now, you can still buy these handles. They're fairly cheap. It is this whole assembly part here for the left side, and for the right side, it's this. I think it goes up to here. I've only replaced the left side before, not on this saw, on that one. But again, like I said, parts are going to eventually become an issue for that one, as it is for this one. So dust collection is okay as long as the boot is there. The Gen 1 sucks. You can see the height of the boot. You can extend that, obviously. The Gen 2 is a lot better as far as dust collection goes. Tyler Ernsberger on Instagram is working on a suite that I've been hounding him for, dust collection system that he is Frankenstein together, that looks really cool. So you can check that out on his page. And when he gets that up in production, I'm definitely going to want to get one of those off him. So hopefully that answers your guys' questions. If I missed anything, let me know. But that's how you can tell the Gen 1 from the Gen 2. I know it's a long video, but I figured I wanted to try to cross over as much as possible. Again, FSH, Japanese Gen 2 with a laser. FSB, Japanese with no laser. FS, Japanese Gen 1. Gen 1 has the continuous handle. Gen 2 does not. Gen 2 has a sticker base. Gen 1 is machined into the base, or cast into the base. And the Chinese saws are the darker gray color. And they always have, outside of FS, it's something else besides FSH or FSB. There's another letter added to that. So I don't know, because I don't have one, but I do know that to be true. So anyways, there you guys go. Hopefully that answers your questions regarding the Japanese-made Hitachi miter saws.